Hello, friends and family. I hope it's sunny and bright where you are because things are about to get chilling and dark on today's episode of Scandals, Intrigue, Nightmares. I'm your storyteller, Alexis Morgan, and this is the bi-weekly podcast that gives you an escape from your daily commute with a story about sinful, real-life events. Today, I am telling you a nightmare of absolutely epic proportions. It is just awful. The South African Breda Triple Axe Murders. This content may not be suitable for all listeners. If you are triggered by murder, please do not listen. Proceed at your own risk. This is a recount of events based off of public news and content, and with personal opinion commentary. Sources will be cited at the end. It's the early 2010s. The South African Breda family was a close-knit group of 5 with an estimated net worth of $17 million. Martin, the father, was extremely successful. He was 54 years old and reportedly a director of at least 25 companies. Most notably was the international property group Engel and Volkers. He also developed the private school Woodhill College in Pretoria, South Africa, which he sold in 2011 for $10 million. His wife, Teresa, studied computer science in college and then worked for IBM, eventually becoming a loving mother to 3 children. The family moved to Australia for 8 years so their children could attend prestigious schools, then moved back to South Africa in 2014, supposedly for Martin's business purposes and to be closer to extended family. When the family moved back to South Africa, their new residence was a 4,000 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2-story luxury home situated in the gated community of the Dazals Golf Estate. It also had a splash pool, state-of-the-art kitchen, and 2 garages. The neighborhood is nestled in Stellenbosch near Cape Town, South Africa, and according to the community website, it has golf courses, a working wine farm, guest lodging, and other luxury amenities. And it's beautiful. When you look it up online, the pictures are just these endless flatlands, lush trees, bright white houses, and mountains in the backdrop of almost every photo that are pink and purple, and it just looks so beautiful and peaceful. Dazals was considered to be one of the safest places in South Africa, called by some an Alcatraz, because it had a high voltage electric fence around the community, motion sensors, an alarm system, 24-hour guard patrol, and access controlled gates. Rudy, the oldest son at 22 years old, had graduated from Trinity College in Melbourne and was enrolled in the University of Melbourne's graduate engineering program. Henry, 20, was studying physics at the same university but had reportedly dropped out. There are conflicting reasons as to why. I couldn't figure out exactly because articles all cite different things, but some of the reasons were he was trying to take a gap year in his studies, or that he had a medical condition involving his brain, according to one Australian news article, or there was a third option that I'll get into later. The youngest child, 16-year-old Marilee, was a bright girl looking forward to graduating high school and moving on to college, just like her brothers had. On January 27, 2015, less than a year after the family had moved into their new home, the police were alerted of a disturbance. There was a home invasion at number 12 in the Dazals community, the Breda household. But what police actually found when they arrived would be much, much worse. The night of January 27, 2015, the Breda family was just relaxing in and around their home. They had gone shark diving a few days before, and were just trying to catch up on their rest and relaxation. Rudy was on a jog, Henry was playing video games on his computer, and Marilee was reading in preparation for school the next day. The next day, in fact, Rudy would be flying back to Australia for classes himself. Close to 11 p.m., the family withdrew one by one into their rooms upstairs, except for Henry, who remained on his laptop deep into the night. Eventually, he too retired upstairs to the bedroom he shared with his older brother, Rudy. Around 2 a.m., Henry got up to use the bathroom, which was attached to the bedroom that he shared with Rudy. All of the lights were off, and he kept them off, and instead just crept into the bathroom using only the light on his cell phone. He closed the door behind him. All of a sudden, behind the closed door, he heard loud, strange noises coming from the bedroom. Then there was a scream. Henry pulled up his pants and peeked his head through the cracked door into the dark bedroom. There, before his eyes, he could make out a tall, muscular figure dressed in all black, attacking his brother with a large object. Henry was instantly terrified, his whole body frozen in fear. He watched in horror as the figure brought blow upon blow to his brother with the weapon, an axe. Henry yelled for help. Martin Van Breda ran into the boys' room. He flipped on the lights as he entered, unaware that the intruder was at the ready for him. The intruder chopped mercilessly at Martin from behind, and Martin fell lifeless onto Rudy's bed. At this point, the attacker scurried out of the bedroom into the hallway. Henry, still in the bathroom, peeking out of the door, heard a commotion, and then the attacker reappeared into the bedroom holding a knife. Henry tried to make a run for it, but the attacker cornered him between the two beds in the room. They started fighting. Henry suffered minor lacerations on his chest and was finally stabbed with the knife. The attacker turned and ran out. Henry pulled the knife out of his stomach area and pursued him. In the doorway of the bedroom, Henry passed his sister Marilee, who was on the floor bleeding from her head. And then, at the top of the staircase, he passed his mother, also profusely bleeding on the floor. Henry found an axe near his mother's body. He picked it up and threw it at the intruder, who was turning the corner of the split staircase. The axe missed and instead stuck into the wall. When Henry reached the bottom of the staircase, a second person crossed his line of sight. The person was shouting in Afrikaans at the attacker from upstairs. The two intruders ran through the kitchen, through the ajar back door, into the hot, dark night. By the time Henry made it to the back door, he couldn't see anything. It was completely black outside. He walked back through the kitchen and up the staircase, but before he could make it to the top, Henry passed out.
What is your emergency?
I need an ambulance. Lots of,
You need an ambulance?
Yes, please.
What's your name, sir?
Henry van Breda.
Henry. What's the contact number you're phoning from?
My home phone number, but I'm not sure what the home phone number is. My cell phone. We're at 12 Hosker Street, please.
What is this number that you're phoning from? Is there someone else who can speak if you're not able to?
No,
Who else is in the house?
there's no one else.
I need the contact number, please.
Yeah, okay. 021
021
8800
8800
493.
493.
This is just part of the 25-minute phone call that Henry made around 7 a.m. the morning of the attack. You can listen to more of it at Multimedia Live's YouTube channel. If you are frustrated listening to it, let me assure you that you are not alone. The call was leaked to the public, becoming a hot topic of dispute as the murder of the Van Breda family gained popularity in the press. But we're not quite there yet. When the paramedics and police arrived, they thought that they were responding to a home invasion, but it was easily the most gruesome scene in most of their careers, far beyond a home invasion. Henry was standing outside in blood-stained clothing and led the paramedics and the police into the house through the front door. The whole place reeked of blood and urine, which one of the police officers said, quote, "It fell like a waterfall from the top of the stairs." Rudy Van Breda was dead. He had chop wounds on the left side of his neck and temple, and the left and central upper part of his scalp, one of which created a deep laceration in his brain. An autopsy revealed a pool of blood in his stomach, indicating that his death was not instant. Martin Van Breda was also dead. He had suffered severe injury from chop wounds in the back of his head. He had no defensive wounds, meaning that he was unaware of the imminent attack when he was killed. Teresa Van Breda had suffered defensive wounds as she tried to fight off her attacker, but ultimately was killed by sharp, blunt force trauma to the head. Police said that there were bone fragments on the scene. Marilee Van Breda was found alive. She had severe chop wounds to the head and severe blood loss, but after being rushed to the hospital and spending a few months in recovery, Marilee would survive the attack. Henry Van Breda sustained minor physical injuries compared to the fate of his family, such as lacerations to the chest and stab wounds from the knife that was used against him. I want to take a break and tell you about a bigger phenomenon that was happening in Stellenbosch, where the Van Bredas lived in the early 2000s. Balaclavas are like ski masks, worn as full head coverings to disguise identity. The only visible part of the person is usually their eyes and sometimes their mouth. Balaclava gangs became an issue for the Stellenbosch region during this time. Groups of gang members broke into homes for short but lucrative robberies. Some claims indicate they collaborated with law enforcement. From 2002 until early 2014, there had been 24 homes burglarized by Balaclava gangs in the Dazals Gulf Estate, the neighborhood in which the Van Bredas lived. Henry believed that a robbery gone wrong by a Balaclava gang was the reason behind the vicious and violent attack on his family. The only problem for Henry was that nobody believed him. Suspicion turned instantly to Henry. As news of the attack spread like wildfire, criticism emerged towards his handling of the situation, and people questioned if there was more to the story. Police conducted an investigation of the home and did not find clear evidence of a robbery or even a break-in. The fence around the house was not compromised, and there was no blood spots outside of the home except for 2 small droplets on the exterior wall. One of the droplets belonged to an unidentified person and the other to Rudy. However, it is speculated that Rudy's blood landed on the wall via the open upstairs window when he was being attacked. In court, defense would cling to the theory that the intruders left the small smears on the wall as they escaped the home, but no other blood traces were detected outside. Furthermore, many would argue a major sticking point to be the nature of calmness and lack of urgency in the emergency call. Instead of panic and fear, Henry seemed overwhelmingly calm and cordial with the operator. He did not insist on an ambulance to arrive or explain the brutal attacks first, like people would speculate a traumatized person would do. Additionally, some people claim to hear Henry giggling when describing that his family was attacked.
Okay, what kind of injuries is there?
My family and we were attacked by a guy. An axe.
What's an axe?
Unconscious, it is.
Unconscious, huh?
Yes, and bleeding from the head, please.
Okay.
Yes, and bleeding from the head, please.
Okay.
There were other things that didn't add up too. For example, the timeline after the intruders fled confused people. Henry told police that he passed out on the stairs after the attack. Based on my research, that would be around like 3 a.m. And then he woke up at 7 to call emergency services. However, police found evidence that Henry called a phone number repeatedly in the morning around 4:30 a.m., well after the attack and still hours before phoning authorities. The number belonged to his 16-year-old girlfriend at the time. They would eventually break up. Stranger still, there was evidence of cigarettes around the kitchen table. Henry said that he smoked them before calling for help in an effort to calm down. Henry's critics said that smoking the cigarettes before getting help seemed like he was waiting around to be sure that his family members were dead. And if it was a robbery, why was nothing stolen? Teresa's purse was open on the dining room table, as well as a laptop, located directly in front of the home front door. Nothing was stolen out of the purse, and the laptop was undisturbed. The intruders could have easily grabbed these two items on their way in or out of the home that night. Now, I'm going to construct a visual for you. It's a very basic layout of the Van Breda's ground floor of their house. Imagine a square, and the front door and the staircase are located at the bottom of the square. The back door is located at the top of the square, and the kitchen is off to the left. It was determined that the knife used against Henry Van Breda came from the kitchen, and the drawer that the knife was housed in was left open. Next to the drawer, kind of in between the drawer and the back door, still off to the left in the kitchen, was the pantry. A houseworker confirmed that the axe used in the crime was taken from the pantry, where it was regularly stored. So, if Henry's account was true, then the intruder snuck in the back door of the home, which he left open behind himself, located the axe in the pantry, located the knife in the drawer without opening up any other drawers, and then walked past the purse and the laptop to ascend the staircase where the family was sleeping. It could be interpreted that this is more of an intent to kill rather than an intent to rob. And if so, what is the motive to kill? The Van Breda family was reportedly a very close-knit family. They went on family vacations. The parents cared about their kids' education, sent them to the best schools, friendly with everyone in the community. They didn't seem to have a lot of enemies. So things were really not looking good for Henry at this point. After the attacks, suspicion and speculation of Henry continued to escalate into even more and more public doubt that his account was true. Over the next year and a half, a case was built against Henry Van Breda for the attacks. On June 13th, Henry turned himself into police on the advice of his lawyer. The next day, he appeared in court to face 3 charges of murder, 1 of attempted murder, and 1 of defeating the ends of justice by blaming others. He made bail, which was around $8,000. The trial began in April 2017, over 2 years after the attack. It gripped and divided South Africa, breaching the surface of multiple social issues like racism and income inequality. The dynamics of the family were discussed at length during the trial. Henry's mother's side of the family supported Henry and his innocence. Mary Lee did not testify. Since she had suffered from retrograde amnesia, she was unable to recall anything up to as close as a week before the attack. During the trial, Henry's recount of events changed continuously. Initially, he witnessed his brother and father's murders by peeking out of the bathroom, which is the story that I told you. However, by the end of the trial, Henry said that he witnessed them by standing in the corner of the bedroom. You can actually watch video footage of Henry in the trial room. It was pretty upsetting to me since he had to talk about what happened and demonstrate the attacks with props. Henry's the only person who really knows the truth about what happened. So if he was innocent, I feel like having to go through that must have just been really traumatizing to relive over and over and over again. Unfortunately, things get much, much worse for Henry. On May 21st, 2018, Henry was found guilty on all charges. The judge took a painstaking 6 hours to deliver the verdict. At the end, Henry was sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences, which is at least 25 years for each murder. You can watch a video of Henry being convicted and see the way that he reacts to the news. but there's not much to watch, honestly. His facial expression didn't really change as the judge declared him guilty. He just seemed to stare ahead with his mouth and eyes, not giving anything away. The reasons for the verdict were as follows. First, there was little to no evidence of a break-in. The usual indicators like broken windows, doors, or other points of entry just were not there. No identified footprints were found, and valuables that could have been easy targets of a robbery were left undisturbed in the home. That implied that the attack happened by someone already inside the house. Secondly, Henry's wounds were determined as self-inflicted. His narrow escape with a knife instead of an axe that killed the rest of his family was confusing. An expert was brought in to examine the axe that police found stuck in the wall. By Henry's account, he had thrown it down the stairs trying to hit the fleeing intruder. However, the expert concluded that the axe showed signs it was not thrown, but was rather hit into the wall by a controlled hand, meaning that it was staged. Finally, and most damning, were the bloodstains. Henry's shorts and socks had blood all over them, mostly Rudy and Martin's. The spatter patterns apparently were indicative of close proximity to the blood source when force was applied, meaning Henry was standing close to the victims when they were hit and killed, not safely tucked away behind a closed door. Henry maintained to the end of his trial that he didn't do it, so we can only speculate to this day what his motive might have been. Some popular explanations are that he lost his temper, that he was on drugs, or that he just wanted his inheritance money. It is rumored that Henry felt like the black sheep of the family and was jealous of Rudy for being the so-called family favorite. A few articles said that Henry had to drop out of the University of Melbourne because of some issues with drugs, and this could have been a third reason why the family got a fresh start in South Africa in 2014 to begin with. Interesting to note, before his trial began in 2016, Henry had a run-in with authorities for drug possession. After the trial, Henry was handcuffed and led out of the courtroom and transported to Poolsmoor Maximum Security Prison in Cape Town, South Africa. It is one of the world's most depraved and brutal prisons, according to an article in The Sun written by Jamie Pyatt. 98% of the inmates are black or mixed race, meaning wealthy white Henry would be a target from the moment he walked in. He had already experienced this when he was jumped by 5 inmates during his trial. When he arrived, Henry had to exchange his gray, fancy suit for orange overalls. After a thorough body search, he was given a blanket, which probably was stolen quickly by other inmates. According to the same article, violent attacks and gang rapes greet most new inmates. The prison was meant to hold only 4,300 prisoners, but is overcrowded with over 7,000 of the country's most dangerous criminals. According to the article, cells that are built to hold 30 men are filled with up to 80 who have to share one communal toilet. Most sleep on the floor without blankets. There is one warder per 100 inmates, and the warders leave at night. There is a high infection rate from rat bites, TB, and HIV from repeated rapes. The prison is run by rival gangs, of which Henry would have to make an important choice. The 3 biggest gangs are the 26, 27s, and 28s. If Henry joins one, he will have to become a member's wife, but not joining a gang means no protection. While it will be a brutal way to survive the rest of his 20s and early 30s, Henry does have a silver lining. The South African prison system does not have the money to keep all inmates for life sentences. It is speculated that he will be eligible for parole in 8 to 10 years, and after making a plea for release and writing a statement of regret, Henry Van Breda will walk free. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard or have any other feedback, please feel free to tweet me at SINPOD, that's SIN_POD. Sources for this episode were the family axe murder survivor disappears from view as her brother awaits sentence, an article in the New Daily Australia by Carly Oley, the Henry Van Breda trial on BBC News by Pumza Filani, True Crime Conversations podcast by Jesse Stevens with guest Julian Jansen, Who is the Real Henry Van Breda, an article in the Sunday Times by Julian Jansen, an article called Murdered Stellenbosch Man Had Extensive Business Interests by News 24 outlet, Henry Van Breda, These Are the Gruesome Injuries He Inflicted on His Family, an article in the South African by Tom Head, images from inside the Van Breda home shows why buyers might not mind the triple murder, an article in Two Oceans Vibe by Jasmine Stone, Inside the Van Breda crime scene with Tracy Stewart on YouTube, the Van Breda trial, an article on EWN News by Giovanna Gerby, Killer Queens True Crime Podcast Episode 69, Henry Van Breda Part 1, High Life to Hell, an article in The Sun by Jamie Pyatt, and the YouTube video of Henry Van Breda's emergency call by Multimedia Live. What do you talk about when you don't want to talk about yourself? Every 2 weeks, mystery lover Alexis Morgan, that's me, tells you a sinful tale of real-life crime and drama on the podcast Scandals, Intrigue, Nightmares. If you need a good conversation starter or just an interesting story to hear on your way to work, then listen to this true crime podcast. Bye!